Would you endorse a gender-neutral Olympics?
I don't think that's the way forward. No.
This was the best I've ever seen Helen Webberley on one of these panels because she barely fucking spoke.
Trans men are biological female and therefore have a physical inferior disadvantage when they compete against men.
Or could it be that society, the patriarchy, just hate women and just want to bully them on every single level?
What are you trying to say? Trans men are women? It's not very woke.
Why am I dancing with that trans person?
Helen Webberley was on Piers Morgan. That's very nice. Talking about trans sports. See what happened.
Initial findings from a science-based review indicate that athletes born male retain obvious physical advantages even after treatments to reduce testosterone levels. The ban will be in place before the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. This is despite Democratic candidate for governor Betty Yee telling me that she'd like to see a gender-neutral Olympics.
I think transgender female athletes are women athletes, and they should be able to compete.
Really? So if you were governor of California, you would support biological males who identify as women competing in women's sport in the Olympics?
They are now identified as transgender female.
And you think that makes, and you think it's fair that they should then compete in women's sport?
I think they should be able to compete in women's sports.
Well, as ever, trans activists blame right-wing flamethrowers for amplifying a minority issue. But this week brought more evidence that if there is any organised lobbying to silence criticism from the other side, it's the LGBTQIA2SL+ campaigners. The leaked BBC memo, which exposed its hatchet job on President Trump, also had plenty to say about this issue. It revealed that a team of specialist gender reporters kept critical stories off air, resulting in, quote, a constant drip feed of one-sided stories, celebrating the trans experience without adequate balance or objectivity. These included glowing reports about the nutritional benefits of trans breast milk. Well, joining me now to debate all of this is Angel City FC's player, Elizabeth Eddy, commentator and YouTuber, Blair White, the trans rights...
Oh my God, man. Please, I beg you, calm down on the lip fillers. You look like a Cheep from fucking Super Mario. Okay. Have we memorized? We got this image in our heads? There it is.
Rights advocate Dr. Helen Webberley and the comedian and commentator James Barr. Elizabeth, let me start with you. You wrote an op-ed piece about this issue, which led to a furious reaction from some of your teammates. First of all, for those who didn't read the op-ed, what was the central point of your argument?
First of all, thank you, Piers, for having me. You've got a really cool thing where you bring a lot of people to the table with different views. I think that's the way forward. So thank you.
Please don't brown nose Piers Morgan.
So what I wrote the op-ed about is that I believe women's sports do need to be for women, simply because biological sex is, as women are weaker than men, intersex and trans athletes. That has nothing to say against intersex or trans athletes. They're people and they're awesome, amazing, and they deserve to be respected. But because women have biological weakness, they need to be protected.
And what was the reaction to your op-ed? You had your own colleagues who you play with going public and attacking you.
We've all obviously seen the article that was written in the New York Post earlier this week, so I really want to start off by saying that that article does not speak for this team in this locker room. I've had a lot of combos with my teammates in the past few days, and they are hurt and they are harmed by the article, and also they are disgusted by some of the things that were said in the article.
So that was Sarah Gordon, one of your teammates, calling it transphobia. What was your reaction when you saw that?
Reasonable people can disagree when it comes to this topic, but there's no need.
I haven't read the thing. I'm going to assume it was probably fine. Bear in mind, there might be stuff in there that's extra to men being stronger than women. I'm not too familiar.
To go to name calling and bullying because it doesn't set a good example moving forward.
Assuming that this was just about men being stronger than women, so shouldn't play alongside them. That is a ridiculous response. It's not transphobic. It's not harmful. It just is kind of true, unfortunately. I mean,
that must have caused, I imagine, a lot of tension between you guys. Have you been able to resolve things?
As it stands, I have invited her to my wedding and she has said yes. And the invite's been sent out and it still stands because, again, I think offering an olive branch and trying to find the space where we can coexist and have this conversation is really important. But I haven't heard back yet.
I mean, my experience, I have to say, is that if you raise your head above this parapet, we've seen it with Riley Gaines, J.K. Rowling and others, any woman who stands up and says this is unfair, which it is, immediately gets branded transphobic to shut them down. Do you think that that is a pretty lazy and disingenuous way of dealing with this debate?
I do, and I also understand where people can get really emotional, and that's where it might take a little time to come back to the table. But I do think in time, like given like compassion and kindness of just showing goodwill of continuing to say, hey, I'm here to discuss, we can do this together. We don't have to fully agree, but we do need to talk about it so we can vote forward instead of completely shutting down the conversation.
Okay, Dr. Helen Webberley, I mean, I literally had a candidate to be governor of California on 2 weeks ago, arguing there should be a gender-neutral Olympics, seemingly oblivious to the reality that if there was a gender-neutral Olympics, women would barely win any medal. They might win, I think, 1 or 2 bronzes in the entire Olympic Games. It would be the end of women's sport. So,
yeah, if we made the entire thing gender-neutral, that would be good for sure.
Why is what we've just heard from Elizabeth wrong? Why is she not actually just defending the obvious integrity of women's sport against something which is obviously unfair?
I mean, I think, Piers, that we all want fairness, and we all want we don't want anything to be unfair, and I think that's what your guest is saying. But it's what is making it unfair? Is it the fact that they are transgender, or is it the fact that they have a bigger body, or bigger lung capacity, or a stronger grip, or better exercise tolerance? And are we banning the right thing? Are we banning the thing that actually leads to unfairness, which is a gender identity, rather than the advantage?
What?
Leads to unfairness, which is a gender identity.
They're certainly not banning people based on gender identity. They're banning people based on sex. No.
Rather than the advantage. That's the question. We all want fairness in sport, and nobody wants women's sports.
Well, no, but the obvious question.
It sounds like she's questioning the intent, but well, I mean, I don't know. Is that neither here nor there? It almost sounds like she kind of agrees, but doesn't want to come out too strongly on that side because we know what her supporter base is, right? We know who is like retweeting and like congratulating her on X every time she says some retarded thing about trans people being next in line for the Holocaust.
Ethnic cleansing, that's what this is. Just like wartime, where you had to queue up and prove that you were pure enough to be able to live. And now we have to queue up and have a test to see whether we're female enough to take part in female sports. Absolutely disgusting behaviour.
Can you ever imagine living in a country that was accused of genocide on transgender people who are apparently protected under our Equality Act?
Well,
would you endorse a gender-neutral Olympics?
I don't think that's the way forward. No, I don't think that everyone in the same...
Why?
Well, for the very reasons that you've just said. I mean, you say that we'd only get a few bronzes as women, but maybe in the less powerful sports. I mean, I can't see a gender neutral.
This is true. There's going to be certain sports that there isn't really an advantage either way. Like I think like ultra long distance kind of running and stuff, where it's more about stamina than it is about like explosive power and strength. I think there's a bit more of an even playing field. Like you've got that Chris Mosier guy who's a trans man Olympian who did really well. Like I'm pretty sure his events were like race walking and stuff, like long distance, super long distance kind of stuff. So it makes sense that a trans man might do well there. Whereas in almost any other sport, trans men just barely get a look in. People love citing that Patricio Manuel guy who did boxing. He won like 3 fights against men who were like smaller than me and I'm not big. And then he lost in the first round to the first person that knew what they were doing by the sound of it. Literally 4 fights. It's not an example. I'm sorry. You'll get the odd one that is like super talented. Might have done well in the women's if they developed that way, if they didn't transition. But I don't know. Doesn't really seem like trans men have a look in general.
Wimbledon final ever having a female winner. But darts was...
Why do you think that is?
Well, you know why it is, because
he wants her to say it. Like she is at least somewhat trying to admit what's going on, you know? Like I can't be too mad so far.
The majority of adult men who've gone through puberty are stronger, as your guest said, than adult females.
Right. So
like that's a heck of a concession for someone like Helen Webberley. Like let's give credit where it's due. Come on. I fucking hate this person. They're a disgusting propagandist. They say all kinds of insane shit constantly to affirm this like TRA worldview. But at least she's like being somewhat honest here, you know?
So you agree that actually that trans athletes should be banned?
He's fucking gutted. He brought her on specifically to fucking argue against this person. Looks like James Barr's gonna have to do it all by himself. Oh no.
And from the Olympics, as appears to be.
Why are you banning trans? It's the transgender thing because it's that black.
It's not trans, it's males. Males from women's sports. Trans women happen to be male necessarily. So that's how it's kind of shaking out, unfortunately. We've still got some work to do, I guess.
Blanket ban of a gender identity.
Because they're biological men.
But again, that's just a sex. But what we're trying to do is fairness in sport. So we want people
It's
to
not
have
just sex, it's their biology. Their biology gives them an unfair advantage over biological women. It's just a fact. That's why.
I don't know if she's coming across well so far. She seems like she's trying to have her cake and eat it too, and find some way of disagreeing and some way of still kind of pouring sugar in the ears of her supporters whilst kind of contradicting everything they think, you know. I'd rather, if you're gonna be honest, then be honest, you know.
Why we separate?
I think that's,
the
sorry to interrupt, I think that's a bit of a sweeping statement.
Actually, is
a
right.
bit dumb of you, to be honest, if you're not actually listening to what you're...
James Barr is never allowed to call anyone dumb, not even Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan is fucking dumb. James Barr is not allowed to call him dumb, I'm sorry.
Well, God,
doctor you've
really?
got. Well, it's not about whether they're trans or not, it's about their biological differences. And if we looked at sport...
Yes, that's what he said. Yes, I agree.
If we looked at everybody's bodies and capability different and categorise people by strength, then we could have a gender neutral.
That's retarded. How much extra work are they going to have to do to lay out these categories? How are they going to make sure it's fair? Why not just do it by sex? It's just easier. Who's the best man at this? Who's the best woman at this? These like strength category things, they make sense for like certain sports like boxing or whatever, because a 100-pound man against a 200-pound man might actually be fucking dangerous. But in general, you're not going to see this. You're not going to see sprinting divided by like strength or height or something, and all these different categories. More than anything, the Olympics would be like fucking months long, because there'd be so many different categories to get through. It's a non-starter. There isn't a better way of dividing people. Trans people fall afoul of it because they kind of straddle that particular division. That just is how it is, unfortunately.
Olympics, because we'd have people who are equal playing against each other.
Okay, which event do you think we could have a gender?
I have no idea, but if you
Olympics?
look at people's bodies and their shapes and their sizes and their strength instead, I don't know, slapping. Let's look at slapping contests. I'm pretty sure there's a lot.
Yeah, you don't want to put men and women against each other in slapping. Come on, bro. Like, hang on. I've actually seen power slap before. Hang on. Do they have weight classes for power slap? They have fucking weight classes for fucking power slap. They're not going to do it like gender neutral. If they've got weight classes, they need that in addition to dividing it by sex. A man can have much less body fat as a percentage in his body than a woman. Slapping content. Have you never seen power slap before? Look, I don't want to show it because I'll probably get copyright struck or something. That Dana White, what's his name? The UFC guy. He owns this thing called Power Slap. And there's all these rules that you can't like follow through too much, and you can't like lift your foot or whatever shit. You can't like club and like, you know, you're doing more of a fist than a slap. There's all these rules about it. And they take it in turns to like slap each other across the face. It's fucking crazy. It's like the dumbest shit ever, but you know, it's you could spend a few hours just kind of wondering what the fuck humanity has come to and watch a bunch of power slap. It's a thing that exists.
A lot of people that would like to slap you regardless of shape. To be honest with you,
I'm sure there are, mate, but I'm sure there are. But would you like to see 100 meters, for example, which have men and women in it?
I'm only saying that would work if people are categorized by their ability rather than their biological.
By their ability, so completely esoteric. Who's good at it and who's bad at it? Okay, so all the top class are going to be men. Let's say that in any given sport, pretty much, women aren't starting to feature in the categories until like 10 and like down or something. Women aren't really seeding until like seed 200, seed 2000, whatever. Are they going to be satisfied with that? Or would they rather just have their own competition? Like, it's just retarded. And again, if we're talking about the Olympics, it's like the very top level of performance. So it's just going to be all men's then, surely. You're not going to have all these different ability classes brought into the Olympics. And what happens if you have so many ability classes and so many different competitions within any one sport, and then some of them are still just completely dominated by men? Because in some sports, women just wouldn't get a look in. It doesn't work. It's a non-starter. It's not quite as retarded as that one Destiny panel that I watched, where some guy suggested like income or something. You look at the way like Pele grew up, or like you even Usain Bolt. He weren't fucking rich when he grew up, you know? Like, it's just a non-starter. This is what you do when you're so fucking woke that you can't possibly admit that maybe this way is just the best way. And you have to come up with something where you're not actually answering the question. You're just throwing out a hypothetical to avoid really dealing with the main issue.
Sex.
No, it's complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense.
People's biological sex affect their ability.
Well, in which case they wouldn't be in the same category, would they? But if you're looking at it fairly and openly for everybody, you would look at capability. And if it so happened that all men...
That's utterly retarded. The other thing is, sport isn't meant to be fair. It's about who's the best. It's not about putting every single person on an even playing field. They don't allocate in the Premier League a certain amount of money for each team. Like, the team has the money it has and it spends it on the best players and they try and win. There's no like fucking communist fucking... we all get money according to need and we try and make the teams even. Oh no, you can't buy fucking this guy because you already bought that guy and they're both in the fucking... the most recent winning World Cup team or whatever shit. It just doesn't exist. Sport isn't meant to be fair. It's meant to be who's the best.
Because they were definitely better than women in this case, or stronger, or whatever it is you're saying, then you wouldn't have them together.
James, you're totally and utterly deluded.
Well, I think you're deluded because you're always making this debate.
And then a third category for this gender-neutral idea.
Let me explain something to you. Serena Williams was asked publicly on television whether she could beat any of the top 1,000 men. I think John McEnroe had said it, and then she was asked whether she agreed that none of the top 1,000 men would lose against Serena Williams at her peak. So she's the greatest tennis player in female tennis history. She
even played a guy. Her and her sister played a guy back to back. He had like a cigarette between games, and he was like seed 250 or something, and they both lost.
He admitted that she would probably not beat any of the top 1,000 men players in the world. Right there is the problem, because Serena is a fantastically strong, powerful female.
I mean, this isn't actually a great argument because you've probably got talented football players. You've probably got talented sports people on either side of the argument. You've got people like that Megan Rapinoe person who are like incredibly woke and want trans people in the competition with them. And they're very talented, but they're not necessarily using their brain over this. So it's not actually a very good argument. It really is an appeal to authority. What you want to mention is the fact that she did actually play a male player and lost. What you do want to mention is every time a women's national team goes up against a college team of like 15-year-old boys and gets spanked, like what keeps happening to the US women's national team. Or they play Wrexham fucking over 40s or something. Wrexham aren't even a good team in the UK and they lose. Or like the Swiss national team who did the same thing and lost like 7-1 to a bunch of like teenage boys in Switzerland. Not even really a particularly well-known country when it comes to football, apart from like a handful of players that are like talented, you know.
Talking about men, we're talking about
to ever play the game.
We're talking about other women, trans women.
We are. No, we're not. This is the problem, though. We're calling them women. They're trans women and they're trans athletes.
But we aren't aware of when they transitioned or what their biology is, and that, I guess...
It doesn't matter.
It does. Actually.
Yeah, I think that Megan Rapinoe person was very much doing it for like the woke points. I'd be amazed if most of those people actually believe the shit that they say. It's like political. It's not about the actual sport, you know.
It doesn't matter.
Thing is,
their biology is what matters.
Some sports competitions do that. New Zealand club rugby makes top teams subsidise lower ranked competitors. Fair enough. I'm not aware of it being a thing in the UK.
I think that's what we're really talking about. It does matter. And
what matters is their biology.
Like, I guess you can run a sport that way, but ultimately, especially the Olympics, they're not going to be running it that way. It's going to be who is the best. And that's all that matters. And if it's gender neutral, then it is mostly going to be men. Sorry about it.
Biology.
Are you a doctor?
Dr. Jane Thornton,
so here's the
IOC.
thing.
I know more than the doctor, yes, about...
Yeah, Martina Navratilova. She's been talking about this a long time. We've got Sharon Davies in the UK. Also been talking about this for a long time.
Right, sure.
Okay, Piers did throw it to me, so if I could just say, 4th grade biology debunks trans women in women's sports, so the fact that the IOC even had to weigh in is actually really sad. I don't really know the argument that these other two on the panel are trying to make. Yes, there are biological differences from trans women and biological women because there are biological differences between men and women. And I feel like they're kind of playing this game of like, they just don't want to admit it, but this is that like 80-20.
I think Blair's correct here. Listen, we got the cheap joke in. These lips look really stupid, but she's right.
Funny issue, at least here in the States, that like it's ridiculous it's even being debated. And the fact
like Helen's trying to go halfway and accepts what is just the obvious truth, while still pandering a bit to her target audience. James is so open-minded, his brain fell out, and he's just not engaging in a realistic way. And that's what I come to expect from James Barr. He is just like that, I think.
Fact is, it's not just a few things that differentiate men and women when it comes to puberty. It comes to heart size, lung size, bone density, overall size, height, lung capacity. It's such a long list. It's so thoroughly debunked. And frankly, you know, as a trans person on the panel, I'm so sick of these sorts of issues being pushed on to women, first of all, and also trans people. The last decade of these progressive policies that are supposedly meant to push society forward into a more inclusive society to help trans people have actually just turned trans people into this political football that no one, frankly, on this side that I know of asked for. But then you always have, and this is a perfect example.
I kind of feel this, I think.
Time after time on this panel, people who are not trans arguing for these policies that do nothing but enact backlash against trans people. And so
this is true. I actually agree with this. Listen, I'm the biggest fan of Blair White, if I'm honest, but I agree with this. This is true. The amount of times, like all the insane retarded arguments are actually coming from like non-trans people, supposedly on our behalf. I find it insanely annoying. Like, I don't want it. I never asked for it. You always thought James was trolling. Well, maybe he is. He doesn't, like, it's hard to say. But the thing is, people seem to genuinely believe what someone like, what someone like James is saying. Like, I don't know. I don't know why you'd troll in this way. It seems a bit, you know, oh, you're the one sticking up for trans people, but as a joke. Well, I don't know. It's a bit scummy if that's what he's doing, I would say.
So it's kind of hard to understand where you guys are coming from. I know you're doing it in the name of like fairness and equality, and you want to fight for the underdog.
Can I tell you
I think you guys have it twisted who the underdog is, because if it's a woman versus a trans woman in a sport, the underdog is the woman.
Can I tell you where I'm coming from? Because I think that's a really valid...
Right, it's more complicated than that. Any one woman might be any one trans woman. But in general, trans women will have an advantage, and it's very difficult to control for.
Point, and I appreciate it. I am basically here because I genuinely believe that conversations like this are using trans people as a political football, and it's ridiculous and wrong.
Yeah, that includes you, bro. That includes you.
And actually, when we're talking about fairness in women's sport, we shouldn't be focusing on 0.0001% of trans women who compete in the Olympics.
Correct, they just shouldn't be there because they're male.
Should be talking about pay differences. We should be talking about the misogyny. We should be talking about the fact that one statistic said 65% of women in sport in the UK have been abused by cis men. That's what we should be talking about when it comes to women's safety in sport, not a non-issue.
Those conversations...
What does he even say? What? Oh, fuck me. Nice Gish Gallop, well done.
Hang on, Blair, hang on, Blair. I want to take him up on that. Okay, so you've just made a very impassioned statement about wanting to protect women and protect women's rights. Am I right?
Yeah, I feel like you think you've got some gotcha here, Piers, but I'm ready for it.
Not a gotcha. I'm just going to take you back to the Olympics, the last Olympics, where an Algerian boxer called...
Let me guess. Iman Khalif is 100% female.
Iman Khalif, who had been banned from the World Championships for having male chromosomes, beat up a young female Italian boxer so badly in the female competition that the Italian boxer quit after 40 seconds, saying she'd never been hit that hard in her life.
And the thing is, I think women's sports are getting more and more of a thing. Like, women's football is bigger than it used to be. I think the Olympics has always like been a big showcase of women's sports.
Where is your campaigning? Where is your campaigning? No.
And it's funny that you bring it up because
Iman Khalif is not a woman, and all Iman Khalif has to do is take a sex test, which will be what they all have to do going forward to establish that once and for all. But Iman Khalif has resolutely refused to do that. We know why, because she was caught before the last World Championships testing positive for male chromosomes. So you would basically be endorsing, in your campaigning for women's right to protecting women, for biological men to get in a boxing ring and beat up women in a way that could endanger their lives.
Iman Khalif is a woman.
You are ridiculously...
Yeah, told you. I do not give a fuck about this at all. I don't care about the Iman Khalif thing. It's never been confirmed either way. Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Deluded hypocrite. Iman Khalif is not a woman.
They are a woman. That's what they've told us. They're a woman.
No.
I think...
If Iman Khalif is a woman, why are you calling her a they?
chromosomes
That's
are
what they
very
told you.
complicated.
All right,
I
I'm
don't
a
pretend to
woman.
know or
Okay,
understand
I'm a woman.
chromosomes,
All right.
but I do realise that some people
okay.
are also intersex. Some people have more chromosomes to the male or female. It doesn't mean they're not necessarily a man or woman, born a man or woman at birth. And what you're saying here is you're basically saying that I am not advocating for women's safety because I believe that a man was okay. But what you're doing here is you're actually attacking a woman yourself. So are you advocating for women's safety whilst you're on television across the world attacking a woman for... Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, listen, it is very possible that Blair got attacked by a bee right before filming, and they're actually being extremely mean. If that is the case, I am very sorry.
Let me answer. I'm attacking a biological man for cheating by competing in women's sport, knowing that they have a superior biology.
They're not here to defend themselves,
which is why they won. It's why they won the gold medal, and that is cheating. It's as cheating as doping. They have an unfair physical advantage, and in a boxing ring, it can be a...
Yeah, so there were sex tests done by the IBA. Some people don't trust the IBA, so it depends how you feel about them. They had tests done in like Turkey and in India. There was a leaked document from France that I think also confirmed it, but I don't know. It's never been confirmed enough that anyone will accept either way. Like I'm just like over the conversation with Imran Khalif. It doesn't seem like they're going to be boxing anymore because they won't consent to a sex test, so they can't box. So hey, don't know.
Fatal, unfair physical advantage. So all the hypocrites like you, James,
but that comes back to my point about biological...
Like if I was to say, come down on one side of the fence, maybe they are male, maybe I should trust the sex tests that have been done, and they have like 5 ARD or something like that. But like this conversation is just, I think, fated to go nowhere unless they actually confirm it one day in a way that these people will believe. Or these people will believe if actually they have XX chromosomes. I don't know.
I'm here to... I want to protect women against vile cisgender men, or whatever you want to...
You've transitioned from an equal pay argument, a misogyny argument, and an abuse argument to one woman at the Olympics in Paris.
Not one woman. Not one woman.
That's what you've come back with. That's the argument you've come back with.
No. Let me finish my point. My argument is all trans athletes should be banned from women's sport.
And what do you think should happen to the misogyny that's occurring?
Yes, which they have been, Piers.
In women's sport by cis men. What are your thoughts on that?
Is he going to give like an example? Like, what is this?
Cis men. What are your thoughts on that?
That should also be banned and targeted, and people have...
Oh my God. I don't know why that tickled me so much. What's he even talking about? At least get him to like explain what he's talking about. What misogyny in women's sports from men? What are we talking about? Let's have some examples. Maybe any one of his examples, yeah, I'd agree. But like all you're doing is like diverting the conversation because you got fucking ganked. Somehow Helen Webberley is looking reasonable next to you.
Held to account.
Do you think so?
Absolutely, 100%.
Do you think they're doing enough? Do you think we should talk about that a bit more? Do you think the balance is slightly off?
I hope James understands that he is just brought on here to be a woke retard. He has no other function.
I've probably written more about that than you have.
I'd imagine you have, yeah. I'd love to read it. I have.
So thank you. Let me come back to Elizabeth, if I may. This is part of the thing, Elizabeth, is a lot of the people who kind of, in my opinion, virtue signal about women's rights. They do so right to the point where they cannot bring themselves to see common sense about this trans issue with sport. When to me, it's so obvious. And I say that as someone who identifies as pretty liberal, right? I want trans people. I think they have a right to exist. I believe they exist. I want them to have rights to fairness.
Oh, thank you, Piers.
Equality and safety, but not at the expense of women's rights. That's why I applaud you for that op-ed you wrote, because obviously, biological men, which is why we separate the sexes in sport historically, at the Olympics, at World Championships and so on, they obviously have...
Because she's not speaking. That does help. Whenever Helen Webberley is quiet, she's making a hell of a lot more sense than when she's not. That is true.
An unfair advantage. To me, it is the same as doping. You're just cheating.
I agree with pretty much everything you just said. And I think at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is protect women's category in all levels. So there is like misogyny happening, but it almost happens in and of itself through this trans situation and intersex. But at the end of the day, like Piers was saying, the trans and intersex people are valuable. They need to be protected. They also are vulnerable, but they're differently vulnerable than women. And women do need their own category, which is why we fought for women's rights, why we have women's sports, why Title IX happened. And so moving forward, the same way women fought for rights to be protected and have spaces is the same way we can move to protect trans people and intersex people and give them opportunities in sport. This is newer and it's earlier on, and we're going to be in this together. And so we can keep having this conversation, but the women's category must be protected. And the NWSL needs to establish gender eligibility on biological sex to ensure fairness and continue the momentum we have going forward.
100%, Blair.
That's a really good point. And I think this insistence from trans rights activists and people on the left that trans women are women, and they reduce it to this one sentence, this one slogan, rather than acknowledge the differences between them, that's what creates this ridiculous argument and has people going against what I know is true. And I know that the two, leftists on the panel right now are very occupied with rights for trans people and for women. But I feel like there's been an erosion of the definition of the word right in recent years. I feel like people think that playing in a sport is a right. And this is not a right. At least in the United States, you have things like right to property, right to expression, freedom of speech, right to fairness under the law, not the right to fairness from a sports league, and certainly not the Olympics, at the elite level. So for me, this is the easiest thing to let go of, the idea that trans women must be in women's sports, especially if the trade-off is...
Yep, true. Should have never really been a thing, honestly. Just it's a non-starter. I don't know how we're in the year we're in, and we're this far along, still trying to argue this shit.
It's just getting people to take that community ever so slightly more seriously. And it's really, really difficult to hear people still insisting that this has to be an ongoing argument when the argument's been done, especially when you look at the election in the States in last year, almost a year ago now. We've really come to a consensus where it's like, we're throwing away the things that we realize don't work. We just made sure gay marriage is still a thing here in the States, but we're getting rid of trans women and women's sports because that's an excess. And it only stands to benefit these minorities that you guys are so fighting.
Oh my God, he's like rolling his eyes. Are you rolling your eyes at the trans person?
Rid of trans women and women's sports because that's an excess. And it only stands to benefit these minorities that you guys are so fighting for to let go of these ridiculous ideas. Like, just let it go, please.
The thing is, James thinks he knows more about trans rights than you do.
That's absolutely not.
And he doesn't.
I've never said that. That's not true. And actually, I agree with a lot of what you've just said, to be honest with you. I do think you're picking and choosing what things the American government are doing that you're okay with and aren't, which is interesting. You're completely denying a lot of things they've done wrong. But
like what?
I mean, she didn't really get into things they're doing wrong. Like, Blair is a massive fucking Johnny-come-lately on, like, the Epstein shit and stuff, but she's not the most brainwashed Trump supporter out there, I guess. I'll say that much.
Well, they banned abortion.
Like what? Because I don't know if you
telling a lot
think
of women
that
what they
I'm
can
someone
and
who
cannot do.
supports...
They didn't ban abortion. It's like kicked back to states. Certain states have banned abortion.
Everything
But
like what?
Well, they banned abortion.
Like what? Because I
They're
don't know
telling
if
a
you
lot of
think
women
that
what they
I'm
can and
someone who
cannot
supports
do
everything
with
the
their
government
bodies
does or
across
something. We can
multiple
go through
different
a
states.
list.
And I think they didn't pass an equal pay bill. So, I think we can pick and choose what arguments we want to bring here. But ultimately, I wouldn't say as a sweeping statement.
Was the abortion thing even down to Trump? I'm not even sure.
Or we can
they're
stay
doing
on
the right
topic.
thing on everything, which, it's fine. But let's stay on topic. I do think you're right. And I'm not insisting that trans women are in sport.
Wait, so you agree? Oh, man. He has to agree because it's a trans person. But he was just disagreeing the entire time. Oh, now you agree. Okay, bro. So it's just devil's advocate. Is that all it is?
I'm merely having the conversation, and I'm saying when we have arguments and conversations like this, what we're doing, and I think we probably agree, to be honest. I think what happens is we get into this big argument about women's safety, but we're really missing the point is that these people are humans, and it's affecting not really that many people. The argument is affecting millions.
I don't think anyone denies that they're humans, and I don't think the amount of people it affects. First of all, you guys have been saying the same thing, that it's almost virtually never happening since the beginning, when it maybe was a lot more rare. But it's happening all over the world now, not just in the States, also in the UK. Clearly, if it's happening at the Olympic level, that's international. So I feel like you guys hide behind, well, it's not that many people. But then I bet if I brought up the topic of abortion, you're going to invoke the 0.5% of people who are 11 years old and molested by their father having a baby. That's what you'd like to make the example out of. So I don't think it matters how many people. And even it's still a lie that it's like almost no people. It's an ever-growing issue.
Yeah, here's the thing. When people argue, oh, it's not very many people, that doesn't suggest you even have a position. It suggests you don't think it's worth worrying about. But then you can't just have the conversation in abstract and say, well, let's say it was twice as many people or 10 times as many people. Where's the amount of people involved in this that it would take you to engage in the conversation? You know, if you're going to say, well, it doesn't matter because there's not very many people, doesn't that suggest you actually think in concept that, say, trans women in women's sports is a bad thing? And that you're only not engaging because of the current reality? Well, things change. What if it was many more people? So it's just, again, it's just a way of avoiding the argument. Usually to kind of pander to a certain group. Because I'm sure he knows trans people that need ultimate affirmation and need to be able to access every single thing in life that women can access. And it's just not realistic.
You know what? The reality is that a year ago, the United Nations came out with a report saying that nearly 1,000 medals had been deprived from biological females by trans athletes in sport at all levels.
This came out fucking ages ago now, like over a year ago. It'd be much more by now.
In that year. And that's just completely wrong. If it was anything else that was causing that was that unfair, then we would just ban it immediately. And it's not because I don't want trans athletes to compete. They should either compete against their biological sex, as almost all of them have done far less successfully before, or they compete in a new category. You know, there are so many more people identifying as trans. Fine, you can be a trans female athlete, just compete, or a trans woman athlete,
I would love
compete against other trans women athletes.
I've had this idea
no
for so
problem
long.
with the Trans Olympics.
Right. I always say this. I've been saying it for years. Why isn't there a league just for trans people? There certainly is enough of them, especially these days. And historically,
totally agree. And
a lot of different groups.
Listen, I'll go in the fucking Trans Olympics. There's not enough of us. Then give me any fucking sport that we don't have a person for, and I'll do it. I don't give a fuck. I'll do fucking shot put. I'll fucking lose to literally everyone. I don't care. I don't care. I'll help get us off the ground. Fuck it.
You know what, Blair? I agree. And you know what? You never, ever, ever read a story about a trans man dominating men's sport. Why do you think that is?
Right.
Why?
Well, not quite never, ever. Like I said, Chris Mosier. But that really is about it. There are very, very few good examples.
Why is it always only the trans women? Oh, could it be because trans men are biological female and therefore have a physical inferior disadvantage when they compete against men?
Or could it be that
Yes,
society, the patriarchy, just hate women and just want to bully them on every single level?
What are you trying to say? Trans men are women? What are you trying to say, James? It's not very woke. It's not very woke.
Yeah, no,
what
it
a
wouldn't
wonderful
be that
way
one,
to
actually,
end.
no.
What a statement of utterly cretinous absurdity on which to end. You never let me down, James Barr. Thank you all very much indeed for the debate. Elizabeth, I'm right here for you in your op-ed. Don't let your teammates bully you. You're right.
Oh, wow, literally Helen Webberley spoke like a handful of times at the start, and that was it. Yes, this was her best outing ever. This was the best I've ever seen Helen Webberley on one of these panels, because she barely fucking spoke. Oh my god.